Bueno, señores, lo que acaba de pasar en el Departamento de Justicia de Donald Trump es simplemente brutal. Una de las figuras más leales y de las más controversiales en esta administración, Alina Habba, acaba de renunciar. O bueno, eso es lo que verán en muchos titulares y en muchas noticias locales. ¿Cuál es la verdad detrás de todo esto? A Alina Habba la echaron hace meses. Y la historia detrás de todo esto es mucho más grande de lo que parece. Una mezcla de caos, de ilegalidad, de pura arrogancia del entorno trumpista. Pero bueno, para eso estoy yo, para explicarles lo que pasó, por qué es que pasó y qué significa para la crisis que ya se está comiendo al régimen trumpista desde adentro. Pero bueno, escuchemos de qué se trata.
The other story out today just happened a moment ago, and this has to do with Alina Habba in New Jersey. She has stepped down. What's going on?
Alina Habba was ruled by the Third Circuit earlier this month as having been unlawfully appointed to be the U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey. She's somewhat differently situated than Lindsay Halligan because she alone did not walk into a grand jury and seek indictments. She alone did not sign them. At the same time, the import of the recent appellate court decision is that Alina Habba could no longer continue to supervise ongoing cases in the District of New Jersey. It would have essentially frozen her office and all of its prosecutions to a halt. For that reason, Alina Habba says she is now resigning. The Attorney General has accepted her resignation.
Ok, señores, lo primero, los medios están diciendo que Alina Habba renunció como fiscal del distrito de Nueva Jersey. Pero a ver, es casi como cuando un jugador que fue cortado del equipo hace unos meses, que fue puesto en la banquilla, aparece en redes diciendo que ahora se retira del deporte. O sea, gracias por avisar, pero a ver, ya estabas afuera. La Corte de Apelaciones del Tercer Circuito ya la había descalificado oficialmente. Porque amigos, ella nunca estuvo legalmente nombrada, nunca. Desde hace meses estaba ocupando este cargo de manera ilegal. Entonces un tribunal tuvo que salir a básicamente decirle, tú no perteneces aquí. Así de simple. Pero claro, ella en su comunicado culpa a todos. Culpa a los jueces, culpa al proceso, que es simplemente la Constitución funcionando, o bueno, está culpando al Senado de los Estados Unidos por tener que aprobar nombramientos. A ver, como si eso no hubiera sido la regla desde siempre. El problema es que en esta versión del gobierno, en este trumpismo 2.0, el plan es llenar los cargos con gente leal que no responda a la ley, sino que responda a Donald Trump. En esta ocasión le salió mal. Es más, del mismo modo, Donald Trump está intentando culpar a todos. Solo escuchen esto.
By the insurance companies. Okay, what else?
Yeah, Alina Habba says she's stepping down as U.S. Attorney for the District of New Jersey after the courts disqualified her. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, she's not disqualified. You've got a blue slip thing that's horrible. It's a horrible thing. It makes it impossible to appoint a judge or a U.S. attorney, and it's a shame. And the Republicans should be ashamed of themselves that they allow this to go on, because I can't appoint a U.S. attorney that's not a Democrat, because they put a block on it. So if you appoint in Virginia or in New Jersey or in California a U.S. attorney or a judge, I mean, a judge situation is ridiculous. The only people that you can get by are Democrats, because they will put a hold on it. If I put up George Washington and Abraham Lincoln to be U.S. attorney in New Jersey or to be U.S. attorney in Virginia, we have Democrat senators, they will not approve them. And this is a gentleman's agreement that's lasted for too long, and it doesn't make it, especially in light of what's going on today. It means you can't appoint a Republican U.S. attorney, and we don't play the same game with them, but they do. And I hope that somebody speaks to Senator Grassley about doing something about the blue slip, because I'm telling you, John, I put up great people, top people, highest education, the best lawyers to be like U.S. attorney, and both senators. It only takes one, but if they're Democrat senators, they say we're not going to approve it. I had a couple of them say, "Why don't you appoint Democrats?" All because Senator Grassley, with his blue slip stuff, will not let anybody go by. By the way, the Democrats have violated the blue slip provision on numerous occasions, but we don't do it. And what it means is, I guess I just have to keep appointing people for 3 months and then just appoint another one. And it's a very sad situation. We're losing a lot of great people. We have about 7 U.S. attorneys who are not going to be able to keep their jobs much longer because of the blue slip. Because unless, I think I know why they did that, to protect their ass. Okay, that's why they did that. But it should be done away with. I want to be able to appoint the most highly educated, the most respected people. They can't keep their jobs because of the blue slips. Terrible. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Ok, señores, aquí viene lo grave porque por meses los casos en Nueva Jersey están prácticamente paralizados. Jueces que no avanzan juicios. Sentencias que son detenidas. Criminales que están esperando decisiones. Y todo esto porque había dudas legales sobre si Alina Habba tenía autoridad o no para firmar algo. O sea, esto no lo provocaron los jueces. Esto lo provocó el propio Departamento de Justicia de Trump, que se dedicaron a jugar con las reglas y creyendo que siempre podría salirse con la suya. Y ojo, porque no es un caso aislado. Está pasando también en Virginia. Está pasando en otros distritos, donde Trump ha tratado de meter fiscales que nunca fueron confirmados, que no cumplen con los requisitos más básicos en la Constitución. El ejemplo perfecto para esto que les puedo dar es Lindsey Halligan, otra abogada estrella de MAGA que se presentó de repente en un tribunal y a ver, los jueces le dijeron: tú no trabajas aquí. La renuncia de Alina Habba, aunque ella jura que no es una derrota, realmente deja claro que incluso dentro del propio Departamento de Justicia saben que no pueden ganar este caso si es que llegara a la Corte Suprema. No hay las bases legales suficientes. Y eso ya lo dice todo. Porque a ver, si algo que hemos visto es que cada vez Trump piensa que tiene una mínima de oportunidad y bueno, corre directo ¿a dónde? A ese tribunal donde los jueces conservadores lo han salvado más de una vez. Si esta vez no lo hicieron, es porque, claro, el caso estaba muerto desde el inicio. Incluso en su despedida, Alina Habba suelta esa frase, ¿no? Algo risible de: no confundan cumplimiento con rendición. A ver, que sea realista, la sacaron del puesto. ¿Qué más rendición quiere? Ahora bien, ¿qué sigue a partir de aquí? Los tribunales ya dijeron que Trump no puede seguir nombrando fiscales temporales eternamente, saltándose al Congreso de los Estados Unidos. El Departamento de Justicia está tratando de mover piezas. Están inventándose cargos alternativos. Y esto solo lo hacen para poder proteger a sus leales. A ver, igual como lo hicieron con Ed Martin. Pero claro que esto no va a detener las demandas que siguen llegando, ¿no? Tampoco las órdenes judiciales. Menos aún los límites que tiene la Constitución. Ahora, hay un detalle final. Y es que si ni siquiera esta Casa Blanca, hablamos de la más controversial en décadas, quiso arriesgarse, ¿no?, a llevar este caso al Supremo, a la Corte Suprema, es porque sabían que no tenían ninguna posibilidad de ganar. Ni una. Así que sí, señores, este es un golpe fuerte para el trumpismo. Porque si no pueden meter fiscales ilegales sin que los tribunales lo frenen, significa que finalmente ya vemos ese atardecer, como dirían algunos, el límite real que tiene su poder. Y claro que eso va a generar mucho pánico en el trumpismo. Pánico dentro del régimen. Ahora bien, amigos, no es lo único que está generando un poco de pánico en el tema legal. A ver, la jueza Sonia Sotomayor, la de la Corte Suprema, le acaba de decir al Procurador General: nos están pidiendo que destruyamos la estructura del gobierno. Amigos, ¿ustedes entienden lo peligroso, lo alarmante que es esa pequeña frase? En pocas palabras, la administración de Trump está impulsando un argumento que en teoría pues permitiría al presidente poder controlar, poder despedir a prácticamente cualquier funcionario del gobierno federal, incluso dentro de agencias que fueron creadas precisamente para ser independientes. A ver, esta es la famosa teoría ejecutiva unitaria. Es una teoría que básicamente convierte a un presidente en el jefe absoluto de todo el aparato estatal. No hay límites, no hay contrapesos, no hay frenos. O sea, si es que él llega a poder cumplir eso, él podría hacer lo que quiso hacer con Alina Habba. No tendría un tribunal que lo frene. Aquí entra una pregunta que es clave para muchos. ¿Puede un presidente o cualquier presidente en teoría tener ese control total? Veamos lo que se discutió en la Corte Suprema.
I want to bring in now April Ryan, White House correspondent and Washington bureau chief of Black Press USA. Here with me in studio, MS Now senior legal reporter Lisa Rubin and Corey Bretschneider, political science professor at Brown University and co-host of the podcast The Oath and the Office. He is also the author of the book The President and the People. Lisa, so the administration is essentially arguing that the FTC follows under the executive branch and that the president should have the right to hire and fire at will. What do you make of the Solicitor General's argument today and whether the justices are going to buy it?
Well, first of all, let's start from the proposition that the justices already have bought it. A lot of the questioning between the justices and John Sauer today have been on how do you limit this ruling, not whether or not Rebecca Slaughter is going to be restored to her position, which it seems like there is widespread acceptance on this court for the proposition that she's not entitled to be restored. But going back to your question about John Sauer's argument, he is perhaps the most visible proponent of something animating this presidency, the unitary executive theory, the thought that embedded in Article 2 of the Constitution, while not said expressly, is the idea that the president, in taking care that the laws be faithfully executed, is entitled to have widespread, massive control over the executive branch, extending even to who gets to be employed by the executive branch, right? We're talking today about Rebecca Slaughter as the head of the FTC, but this same theory undergirds the widespread firings, for example, of people at the Department of Justice, including Maureen Comey, the former FBI director's daughter, right? It goes from that all the way up to people like Rebecca Slaughter.
Okay, so Corey, the whole idea behind independent agencies was to try to lessen any kind of political interference, influence, so that they can make decisions based on the merit, based on what's best for the American people and not on politics. Slaughter's attorney, that was the argument that they made. I want to listen to that for a moment.
Let me make one other point about the real-world danger that is imminent right now that we know will happen, and that is that if petitioners get their way, everything is on the chopping block. And we're not just talking about the FTC. Opposing counsel said we're not challenging right now the Federal Reserve. We're not challenging Article I courts, but there is absolutely no principled basis for carving those very important institutions out of their rule.
Well, you're right that the Solicitor General was pressed quite legitimately about things like the tax court and the claims court, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't know that you can make the argument that the logic of his argument is going to cause these allegedly revolutionary results without being prepared to explain more concretely than you have the limits of your own argument.
So Alito clearly skeptical there. Break down exactly what his argument was back.
Well, the unitary executive theory, as you've begun to hear, is a radical idea. There has long been a principle that Congress can legislate in a way to insulate civil servants and the head of independent agencies from political firing. And especially that's an important idea in the face of a president who wants something like a dictatorship, complete control. Now, the court has long had an idea that these independent agencies in particular are unconstitutional because the executive power, if it's vested in one person, a unitary executive, a president, should have the complete ability to hire and fire at will. That's an idea that they've had going back to the Meese Justice Department of the 1980s.
So it's not new.
It's not new, but what is new is the danger. And I think that's what's naive about the theory, that it doesn't recognize that in the hand of this president or the hands of a president like him, who is caring about his own interests, not the interests of the American people, it's an extremely dangerous idea. And it might extend, the FTC is one case, it might extend to the Federal Reserve. That's a real possibility given the theory. It might even extend to the idea that civil servants have no protection from political firing, and that would bring us back more than 100 years.
April, this could change the way the government operates, as we've been talking about. And one of the interesting points here is that it wouldn't just apply to President Trump. Of course, it would be sort of like a boomerang when we have a Democratic president in office again. In fact, Justice Kagan said at one point, if you go down this road, it's sort of a rabbit hole, hard to see where you stop. So what's your sense of the stakes of this going forward for both parties and for government in general?
The stakes are very high, particularly in this administration. I think both your guests have been absolutely right. They hit the nail squarely on the head. But let's use this example of the most recent affirmative action case in the U.S. Supreme Court on education. That was misread during the Biden administration. They misread the affirmative action piece. It was just specifically made for education. And now you have a lot of corporations taking this and using this. Look at what could happen. This president who goes beyond the pale, who takes 1 inch and goes 5 miles, he could take this and fire anyone. He could do a loyalty test, again, not just in the executive branch. This can go to so many different avenues, and people misread a lot of what the initial piece is and go and take it and use it. So I am very concerned about how this can impact federal government workers beyond the executive branch. And you have to remember, when people come into any government service, they believe, oh, I have security. This does not lend security at all.
So, Lisa, talk to me about that 1935 Humphreys executor decision. Part of the basis of that was so presidents could not remove a commissioner unless there was, quote, inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance in office. Of course, Slaughter's attorney claims that none of that was presented when she was fired. How much should the justices be reverting back to that precedent that was set back in 1935? And it seems like they won't.
No, it doesn't seem like they will. I mean, look, precedent is called precedent for a reason because the Supreme Court in general is expected to adhere to it. Here, it seems pretty clear that on the request of the Trump administration, that they are prepared to overrule the Humphreys executor case, which, as you noted, upheld the Federal Trade Commission Act and its provision that somebody couldn't be removed for anything less than cause, on the grounds that the FTC at that time, according to that court, was performing things that looked more like legislative and adjudicative functions than political or executive functions. And of course, as time goes by and as the administrative state has grown, the lines have been blurred somewhat. So you could have seen before today, perhaps even a universe in which the court said, you know what, he's okay to remove Rebecca Slaughter, and we're not going to overrule Humphreys executor. Instead, we're going to say that the FTC itself, by the terms of the test developed in that case, no longer functions mostly as a legislative or quasi-judicial body, but really is making policy. You could see how a court might have reached that. But here, having listened to most of the argument today, I don't think that's what they're going to do. I think they are going to overrule Humphreys executor, perhaps with some limiting principles in trying to quash some of the concerns that April was raising about there not being a logical end. Because, of course, if you say that the president has, under his Article 2 authority, the power to remove any member of a multi-member agency, what's the limiting point? What's the stopping point when it comes to ordinary federal employees that historically have been protected by civil service laws?
So, Corey, I see you nodding along. Are we now living in the unitary executive theory era?
Yes, I think so. I agree, certainly, that they're going to overturn this case. And we have to understand it, too, as part of the court's power grab. They overturned, of course, Roe versus Wade. They invented out of whole cloth a fake immunity doctrine that protected the president from being prosecuted. And this is on that level. It really is a restructuring of our government and an evisceration of the longstanding legislative idea that we can protect independent agencies, that we could protect civil servants from political firing. And that's why it's so dangerous.
That's in line with what Justice Kagan tried to argue here. Let's listen to her.
If there's one thing we know about the founders, it's that they wanted powers separated. They wanted the executive, the legislative, the judicial. They didn't want them all in one place. They wanted them separated across the government, across the different branches. Easy enough to agree with, right?
I agree with an important caveat that the court said in see the law that the one, exception to all this division was the presidency itself, where the framers consciously adopted a unified and energetic executive.
Well, that's not a caveat. That's like the not X to my X. Because what I was saying was, and maybe you knew where this was going, so you had to have this caveat, which is really a fundamental contradiction.
Okay, so April, taking that into account, a Wall Street Journal editorial called the 1935 Humphreys executor decision a historic mistake and says it created essentially what is a fourth branch of government, the unaccountable bureaucracy. Did it?
I'm not a lawyer, but I can say this. I know what the founding fathers put in place. I know what our history book said. It's about checks and balances as well. And this is one thing we didn't hear from Elena Kagan, the checks and balances. And we're not seeing that. We're seeing right now a 6-member conservative portion of the court that is favoring Donald Trump and not favoring what the founding fathers put in place, the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. And as we are taking away the powers, possibly, from Congress, the Congress that...
Ok, señores. Para mí esto no es un debate técnico. Quiero catalogarlo como un debate existencial. ¿Estados Unidos sigue siendo una democracia con separación de poderes? ¿O será que se convierte en un gobierno donde todo pasa por voluntad de un solo hombre? La preocupación de esta jueza, de Sotomayor, es totalmente válida. Porque la teoría de que está defendiendo el procurador general siguiendo la línea legal de Trump es que prácticamente quiere reducir el gobierno federal a una simple, digamos, pirámide donde solo va a importar quién esté arriba. Y claro, ese arriba sería Trump. A ver, la idea de poder despedir a cualquier funcionario que sea a voluntad del presidente, yo creo que no es un detalle administrativo, ¿no? Estamos hablando de que esto es una amenaza directa para ciertas cosas. Primero, hablamos de la independencia de las agencias regulatorias. Hablamos de la estabilidad del servicio civil. Sin duda, para mí aquí entran los límites que va a tener el Congreso, cosa que se impuso hace 100 años. Y claro, la esencia misma del sistema de frenos y contrapesos. Otra vez les doy el ejemplo, lo que pasó con Alina Habba. Es gracias al sistema de frenos y contrapesos. Ahora, Sotomayor no lo dijo por exagerada, por dramatismo. Lo dijo porque es cierto. Darle al presidente ese poder es romper la arquitectura de gobierno tal y como lo conocemos. Ahora, ¿qué pueden defender o argumentar los trumpistas? A ver, seguramente un argumento, ¿no?, que suele verse es que las agencias se han vuelto demasiado poderosas, que nadie los controla. Ok, discutamos eso. La solución no es entregarle todo el poder al presidente, como si fuera el CEO autoritario de una empresa privada. Quieren que les dé una solución más fácil. Ok, fortalecer el Congreso. Mejorar la supervisión. A ver, reformar donde sí haga falta. No ir ahí a destruir la independencia del Estado y reemplazarla por un mecanismo que simplemente va a funcionar a punta de lealtad. Ese es justamente el problema. Trump quiere un gobierno de lealtad, no de ley, de obediencia, no de instituciones. Por eso es que esa teoría es tan peligrosa, ¿no? Más aún en manos de alguien que ya nos ha demostrado múltiples veces que no va a respetar los límites de poder, peor aún las reglas democráticas. Lo que estamos viendo en la Corte Suprema no es un caso más, este es un intento muy claro por querer rediseñar el gobierno federal para que el presidente, Donald Trump, pueda manejarlo como si fuera su propio feudo político. Amigos, tal y como lo dijo Sotomayor, esto destruye la estructura del gobierno. Y tiene mucha razón. Un presidente sin límites no es un presidente, es un líder autoritario en potencia. Pero bueno, ¿qué opinan ustedes? ¿Creen que un presidente debería tener ese nivel de control? ¿O creen que esto abre la puerta a un abuso de poder sin precedentes? Los leo en los comentarios. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarme en este video. Recuerden, como siempre, déjame tu like, comparte el contenido y suscríbete al canal. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Hasta luego.